When I turned 65, I thought slowing down was just part of aging. I believed my energy would fade, my body would weaken, and my days would simply become quieter. But the truth is, age doesn't decide how alive you feel. Your choices do. And when I stopped doing a few simple things, everything changed. My energy, my mindset, even the way I looked at life. The first thing I stopped doing was skipping proper meals. For years, I'd grab tea and biscuits in the morning, something light for lunch, and maybe a heavy dinner late at night. But that routine was draining me. I started focusing on balanced meals, a good breakfast with protein, fruits, and whole grains, lighter dinners with soups or vegetables, and lots of water through the day. I noticed that my body didn't feel sluggish anymore. My mind felt sharper. Eating right isn't about dieting. It's about nourishing the body that's carried you this far. The second thing I stopped doing was sitting too much. I used to think rest meant lying on the couch for hours, but rest and inactivity are two very different things. I began walking every morning. Slowly at first, just around the block. Then I added stretching, light yoga, and simple breathing exercises. The more I moved, the more alive I felt. My knees hurt less, my sleep improved, and my confidence grew. You don't need a gym or fancy equipment. You just need to move your body and remind it that it's still capable. And the third thing I stopped doing was complaining about getting older. I used to talk about my age like it was a burden, about what I couldn't do anymore, about how things used to be. But one day I realized those words were stealing my joy. So I replaced complaints with gratitude. Instead of saying, "I'm getting old," I started saying, "I'm getting wiser." Instead of worrying about wrinkles, I focused on the stories behind them. That shift in mindset made every day brighter. Now I wake up with energy, I enjoy my walks, I laugh more, and I feel younger than I did 10 years ago. Aging doesn't have to mean fading. It can mean transforming. When you take care of your body, feed your mind positivity, and stop doing the things that drain your spirit, you'll realize that your best years aren't behind you. They're still waiting to be lived. So if you're in your 60s, 70s, or even 80s, remember this. It's never too late to start feeling alive again. Stop what's holding you back and start embracing what lifts you up. Because the secret to staying young isn't in your age, it's in your attitude. When I stopped skipping proper meals and started paying attention to how I nourished my body, everything began to change in ways I never imagined. For years, I treated food as a routine, something I did because I had to, not because it mattered. My breakfast was often a cup of tea and a couple of biscuits. Lunch was whatever was quick, and dinner came late, heavy, and unbalanced. I didn't realize that I was slowly draining my own energy. My fatigue, mood swings, and foggy mind weren't signs of old age. They were signs of neglect. The body, even at 65 or 70, still needs fuel, and the quality of that fuel determines how you feel, think, and live each day. I began with small changes. I started eating breakfast with intention, oatmeal with fruit and nuts, boiled eggs, or yogurt with seeds. That one step alone changed my mornings. I no longer needed 3 cups of tea to feel awake. My mind felt clearer, and I could move through the day without the mid-morning slump that used to make me feel much older than I was. Gradually, I learned that skipping meals causes blood sugar to drop, energy levels to crash, and mood to decline. For older adults, it can also lead to muscle loss and weakness. So instead of pushing through hunger, I began listening to my body. Lunch became my most balanced meal, a mix of vegetables, lentils, or grilled fish, brown rice or chapati made with whole grains, and a small salad. I focused on colors on my plate, aiming for variety instead of repetition. The brighter the food, the more nutrients it usually carries. I also discovered the power of hydration. I had been drinking too little water for years, mistaking thirst for tiredness. Once I started keeping a water bottle with me, my digestion improved, my skin felt better, and I didn't get as many headaches. It was like my body had been waiting for me to notice its simplest needs. Dinner, which used to be my heaviest meal, turned into something light and calming. Soups, vegetable stir-fries, or lentil broths. I realized that eating heavy meals late at night was robbing me of good sleep. By adjusting my routine, my sleep became deeper, my mornings felt fresher, and my stomach stayed calm. The more balanced my eating became, the more balanced my life felt. I also learned to view food as medicine, not comfort. I replaced processed snacks with fruits or nuts, cut back on sugar, and included natural herbs like turmeric, ginger, and garlic. My energy stayed steady throughout the day, and I didn't feel that afternoon tiredness that used to weigh me down. It wasn't about dieting or restriction. It was about feeding my body what it truly needed. When you give your body wholesome, natural food, it rewards you with vitality, clarity, and strength that no pill can offer. Even after 65, your body still has an amazing ability to heal and renew itself. All it asks for is a little care and mindful nourishment. For a long time, I thought slowing down was a natural part of growing older. After turning 65, I found myself sitting more, resting more, and convincing myself that my body needed it. I would spend hours in front of the TV or sitting by the window, believing I was giving my body the break it deserved after years of hard work. What I didn't realize was that too much rest was quietly stealing my strength, flexibility, and energy. The human body, no matter how old, is built to move. When we stop using it, it starts to forget what it's capable of. The first few times I tried to become active again, my legs felt heavy and my knees complained. But I reminded myself that weakness doesn't mean inability. It simply means the body is asking to be used again. I began with something simple: walking. At first, it was just 10 minutes a day around the house or garden. I would walk slowly, sometimes stopping to catch my breath. But little by little, my endurance improved. The stiffness in my joints began to ease, and I started looking forward to those walks. It wasn't about speed or distance. It was about consistency. I realized that movement was not about pushing the body to its limit, but about gently reminding it that it still has life in it. Walking became my quiet form of meditation. Each step helped clear my mind, release tension, and bring a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in years. Gradually, I added light stretching to my mornings. Just 10 minutes of gentle movements to loosen the back, shoulders, and hips made an incredible difference. I started paying attention to my posture, how I sat, how I stood, and how I moved. I realized that the aches and pains I once blamed on age were often caused by years of stiffness and disuse. With time, I even tried simple yoga poses and light breathing exercises. They helped me balance my energy, improve flexibility, and calm my thoughts. The more I moved, the more alive I felt. My sleep improved, my mood lifted, and my confidence returned. I started feeling capable again, not limited by my age. Even climbing stairs or carrying groceries became easier. What amazed me most was how movement affected my mind. Being active gave me a sense of control. It reminded me that I was still in charge of my own well-being. My outlook shifted from, "I'm too old for this," to, "I'm grateful I can still do this." You don't need fancy equipment or a gym to stay active. Simple actions, walking, stretching, gardening, light dancing, or playing with grandchildren, all count. The key is to avoid long hours of sitting and to give your body the movement it craves. The truth is, the moment you start moving, your body starts healing. The more you move, the more energy you create. And that energy flows into every part of life, making each day feel lighter, fresher, and more fulfilling than the last. There was a time when I used to talk about my age as if it were a curse. Every ache, every wrinkle, every forgotten word became proof in my mind that I was getting old and losing my worth. I didn't realize that my words were shaping my reality. The more I complained about aging, the older I felt. My conversations revolved around what hurt, what I couldn't do, or how things used to be better years ago. But one day I caught myself and thought, what if the problem isn't age? What if it's attitude? That moment became the beginning of a powerful shift in how I live my life. I decided to stop complaining about getting older and start being grateful for being alive. At first, it wasn't easy. I had to retrain my mind to see things differently. When I woke up with a stiff back, instead of groaning, I would smile and think, at least I woke up today. When I saw my reflection in the mirror, I stopped focusing on the lines on my face and started noticing the strength in my eyes. Every wrinkle carried a story, a smile shared, a hardship survived, a lesson learned. With that mindset, aging stopped feeling like a loss and started feeling like a privilege. Many people don't get the chance to live long enough to experience it. Once I began practicing gratitude, my whole world felt lighter. I also learned that complaining doesn't change anything. It only amplifies negativity. Gratitude, on the other hand, changes your entire energy. It opens your heart to joy, even in small things. I began keeping a simple gratitude habit. Each morning, before doing anything else, I would quietly think of 3 things I was thankful for: a good night's sleep, a friend who called, or the simple warmth of sunlight on my hands. This small act grounded me and gave my mind something positive to focus on. It was as if I was training my thoughts to find beauty where I used to find problems. The more grateful I became, the more peace I felt. My stress reduced, my blood pressure improved, and I smiled more often. People around me noticed the change. My conversations started to attract positive energy instead of pity. Instead of discussing illnesses or worries, I talked about memories, hopes, and things that made life beautiful. I found that gratitude made me more patient and compassionate, not just toward others, but toward myself. It taught me to accept that aging is not a battle to be fought, but a journey to be embraced. When I stopped complaining, I stopped feeling like time was working against me. I realized that every day I get to live is a blessing, and every experience adds to the richness of who I am. Gratitude doesn't erase challenges, but it transforms how we face them. It turns fear into peace, self-doubt into acceptance, and age into wisdom. The shift in mindset doesn't just make life easier, it makes it worth living. It's easy to believe that big changes are what transform a person's life, but in truth it's the small, consistent daily choices that shape everything. For most of my life, I underestimated the power of these little habits. I thought one missed walk, one skipped meal, or one negative thought didn't matter much. But over time, those small choices added up and quietly influenced how I felt, looked, and lived. When I finally decided to take charge of my health and happiness, I didn't start with grand resolutions or strict routines. I simply began changing the small things I did every day. Those little decisions turned into the foundation of my well-being and completely changed my outlook on life. One of the first small choices I made was to become mindful about how I started my mornings. Instead of reaching for my phone or staying in bed, I made it a point to stretch, take a few deep breaths, and drink a glass of water. That single act set the tone for my day. It reminded me that I had control, that I could choose to take care of myself before the day took over. I started replacing heavy breakfasts with lighter, more nourishing ones, choosing oats, fruit, or eggs instead of sugary tea and biscuits. Within weeks, I noticed I felt less tired and more focused. Another small but powerful change was taking short breaks to move. I used to sit for hours thinking it was harmless, but even 5 minutes of walking or stretching made a difference. These little bursts of movement became my secret weapon against fatigue and stiffness. I didn't need a gym or a trainer. I just needed consistency. Each walk, no matter how short, was a promise to my body that I hadn't given up on it. Over time, those small walks gave me stronger legs, better posture, and renewed confidence. I also realized that my mental habits mattered just as much as my physical ones. Whenever I caught myself thinking negatively, I tried to replace that thought with something kind or hopeful. At first, it felt forced, but slowly positivity became my default setting. Small acts of gratitude, smiling more, appreciating a quiet moment, or saying thank you, began changing my emotional health. I felt lighter, calmer, and more connected to life. Even my sleep improved when I made tiny adjustments, eating earlier, reducing screen time before bed, and spending a few minutes reflecting instead of worrying. These things may sound insignificant, but together they created balance. Every positive choice fed into the next, creating a quiet momentum that made me want to keep going. What I learned through all this is that small daily choices build up like drops of water, forming a river that shapes the direction of your life. You don't have to do everything at once or make dramatic changes. Just focus on one small thing you can do better today. Eat a bit cleaner, move a little more, think a little kinder. Over time, those little efforts will weave together into a life that feels healthier, happier, and full of purpose. For a long time, I viewed aging as something to fear. I thought getting older meant losing strength, slowing down, and becoming less relevant. Every birthday felt like a reminder of what I was losing: energy, opportunities, youth. But over time, I began to see things differently. Aging is not a punishment. It's a privilege denied to many. It's not the end of living, but the beginning of understanding life more deeply. Once I stopped seeing age as a limitation and started seeing it as a gift, everything about how I lived changed. I stopped chasing youth and started embracing wisdom. I stopped comparing myself to who I used to be and began appreciating who I had become. That shift brought peace, energy, and an entirely new sense of purpose. The body may slow down a little with time, but the heart and mind are capable of growth at any age. I started to see my experiences, both good and bad, as treasures rather than regrets. Every scar, every mistake, and every victory became a lesson that had shaped me into someone stronger and wiser. Instead of saying, "I can't do this anymore," I began asking, "How can I do this differently?" That one change in thinking allowed me to adapt instead of giving up. I found new ways to stay active, to learn, and to contribute. I joined small community groups, started reading more, and made time for things I had once ignored, like gardening and writing. Those activities didn't just fill my time, they filled my spirit. I realized that feeling young has less to do with how you look and more to do with how you live. When you keep your mind open, your curiosity alive, and your heart kind, you naturally stay youthful. I met people in their 70s who were full of laughter and light, and others in their 40s who already seemed tired of life. The difference was never in their years, but in their attitude. Aging gracefully isn't about pretending to be young. It's about celebrating the stage you're in and making the most of it. There's a certain freedom that comes with age. The freedom to stop worrying about what others think, to stop chasing things that don't matter, and to finally live for yourself. When you accept aging as a gift, you begin to treat your body with more respect, your mind with more patience, and your life with more gratitude. You start focusing on what truly matters: relationships, health, peace of mind, and purpose. Each day becomes an opportunity to grow, not to decline. The joy of aging comes from realizing that wisdom, calmness, and contentment often arrive just when the noise of youth fades away. Life becomes less about proving yourself and more about understanding yourself. The beauty of getting older is that you've seen enough to appreciate the simple things: a quiet morning, a warm conversation, a walk in the sun. And that appreciation is what keeps the soul young, no matter how many candles are on the cake. Growing older is not about counting the years. It's about making those years count. When I started nourishing my body with care, moving with purpose, speaking with gratitude, choosing small daily improvements, and embracing aging as a gift, life opened up in ways I never expected. These simple changes didn't just make me healthier, they made me happier and more alive. Age no longer feels like a limitation, but a teacher, reminding me that it's never too late to start again, to learn, to grow, and to shine. The secret to staying youthful isn't found in any miracle cure or hidden secret. It's found in the choices we make every single day. So, no matter where you are in life, start now. Eat well, move often, think kindly, live gratefully, and embrace every moment with pride. Because growing older isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your wisdom,